Hey guys, Melvin here. Welcome to the attic. We're going to be reading a story from the RPGhorrorstories subreddit. This one was posted by user 3ducks. It's about a player, nay, a zealot, of the one true way. He who adheres to the laws of Mercer. He who has sworn to play D&D in one very specific way, even though they might be pretty new to the game in the first place. By the way, if you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to know when I upload new videos. Without further ado, let's check it out. I'm going to preface this by saying that this isn't a full-on horror story, so much as commentary wrapped inside a Halloween episode-level horror story. I will also say that I'm a fan of Critical Role, as both a form of entertainment and as a form of D&D inspiration. Watching it has really helped me develop storytelling skills. Honestly, it converted me from being a railroading DM who would panic when players did something unexpected into a DM who enjoyed thinking on the fly. Something about the way Matt pauses, rubs his hands together, shows a moment of confusion before excitement, and says, okay, when one of the players, Reed, Sam, and Laura, goes completely off the expected path, made me realize the fun in not knowing where things were going. All that said, I had my first encounter with the Mercer effect. I was DMing a one-shot online with a mix of friends that I have played D&D with, online and offline, and a couple new players. Our cast follows: me, DM, Mark, online D&D friend, playing a monk, Bill, brother-in-law with a game or two under his belt, playing wizard, Cindy, sister, same experience as Bill, playing a rogue, first time not playing a cleric, Nina, sister's friend who, when asked if she wanted to play, said akin to, "That's the game with the little statues and weird dice, right?" Playing a fighter, Joxer, the antagonist of this story, a new player who was introduced to the game by looking up Joe Manganiello's workout routine, found Jox Machina, and then Critical Role, playing our war cleric with Traps for Days. A little background on Joxer: we met playing a video game online, and when he invited me to another round, I declined to work on D&D stuff. He went from a "cool bro" to an excited, untrained Labrador whose toy you were holding instantly. He told the other people we had been playing with to go on without him. One thing leads to another, and I sent him an invite to my Discord server. He was the last to join. Instead of a proper session 0, since it was a one-shot, I made my expectations known in chat, and we discussed characters. Me and Mark worked with the others to build characters and make sure everyone knew the rules. Joxer, seeing the party composition, said, "No one is playing a cleric? We need a cleric." I simply said that we addressed that, and I was giving everyone a few healing potions. Since it was a one-shot, I wasn't worried. The monk was trained in medicine in the worst-case scenario. He isn't buying it, and says, "Fine, I'll play the cleric." We were still in voice chat, so I could hear the huff that signaled his excitement deflating. This was maybe a seed of a red flag. As the game approached, Nina messaged me asking about clerics and wondering if she should change to cleric since she is new. Apparently Joxer had been messaging her, telling her she should change to cleric because new players should play clerics, and that fighters aren't very good. She'd been excited about playing a fighter because it seemed simple enough, and she was into HEMA. I reassured her that fighter was a fine class, and if she wanted to play a cleric, she could, but not to change for those reasons. I spoke with Joxer to see if he wanted to play a fighter instead, but he came back to, "We need a cleric. Someone needs to heal." I let him know that there were other options for healing thanks to certain subclasses, but he stubbornly insisted. In retrospect, I probably should have come up with a reason to boot him here, but nothing was particularly bad yet. And in chat, he had been funny and personable, and was even giving some of us some exercise tips to do during quarantine. Dude has a fitness channel on YouTube. Very low sub count, but he enjoys it, so power to him. And he obviously knows what he's talking about. I may have also been developing a very slight crush on him, but since he was a straight guy, and I am a not straight man, I obviously didn't let that take up any emotional real estate. But maybe I also didn't see other signs of trouble ahead because of that. The game night comes, and I reiterate some expectations from earlier in the group's conversation. This was going to be a single game with a short adventure, so I will be nudging you guys towards certain plot points. Role-playing is encouraged. I might streamline some elements of non-adventure related interactions. I'll be doing some voices, but I'm no Matt Mercer, and some of them may sound similar, so I'll try to be clear about who is speaking. I had a lot of conversations in third person if it was a minor character. You know, the shopkeeper tells you that the tax collector has a mistress, instead of speaking as the shopkeeper giving juicy gossip. Things got off to a rocky start. Me, the caravan you'd been assigned to guard, has been traveling through the golden wheat fields for several days. You had packed up camp just a few hours ago, and the still rising sun cast a glow on the fields that almost made them seem to glitter in the sunlight. The last part, I never got to say. Joxer, wait, we're out in a field? We're not in town? Me, no, remember, I said you'd be playing people hired to help guard a small caravan as it traveled to a larger trading town. Joxer, but I was going to buy drinks at the tavern. I wrote this off as maybe him feeling nervous and having prepared something he wanted to do. I had a what would Mercer do moment. Maybe this isn't what he would do, but it did prevent me from arguing with Joxer and gave him a chance to do his tavern roleplay. Me. Thankfully, this caravan belongs to Darren Goblinbane, the half-dwarf heir to the Firestone Distillery. At night, they set up a makeshift tavern when they stop for lunch and at camp. Again, I didn't get to say the last part before he interrupted me. Joxer, half-dwarf? That's not a race. Me, they are rare in most parts of the world, but they do exist. Joxer, can I change my race to half-dwarf? He was currently a Goliath. Me, it won't change your statistics, and this is highly unusual, but sure, you can put down that you're a half-dwarf. Joxer, well then, I will need to rebuild my whole character. Me, we won't go that far. We'll just say that you're a half-dwarf for role-playing's sake. I get inspired. As a half-dwarf, would you like to be related to Darren or be associated with the Firestone Distillery? Joxer, nope. Me, okay then. I changed things up a bit to give them a camping tavern scene earlier than expected, essentially turning day 1, where the adventure was supposed to begin, into day 0, the day before it was supposed to begin. As they traveled, I had each of them describe their characters and probed a little bit to get them to share something that the party might have picked up. Mark said that others might have noticed that at camp he takes particularly good care of his extremely long beard and the extremely long hair he keeps under his turban. Mark used a Russian accent while describing his monk, taking inspiration from Diablo. Bill and Cindy put a little twang in their voice. Considering we live in the South, didn't take much to sell it. And we're playing a married couple who grew up bored with a domestic life, and after a run-in with a bandit, got a thrill from the danger and heroics, and have been chasing that high ever since. Then Nina described her character. Nina, I don't have a voice or anything, but Joxer makes a noise like the air being released from a half-deflated balloon. Nina, excuse you, I didn't make rude noises when you kept interrupting the DM, so shut it. At this point, that little crush I might have had for Joxer fully disappeared, and I began seeing Nina in a new light, and my not straight, not gay self started wondering how to ask her out afterwards. Joxer, I mean, you have to do a voice to roleplay. Me, about to interject, but Nina was already ready. Nina, nope, I may not know the rules very well, but I know that isn't a rule. She then continues to describe her character and explains that the others would have noticed that she had been fun to be around, but doesn't take anyone's shit, whether directed at her or a friend. Then it was Joxer's turn. Before I continue, I will reiterate, if it isn't clear, that I don't think you have to have an accent or adopt new mannerisms while role-playing, and if you make an effort to do so, all the better, even if it's not the best. Joxer, though, after what he said to Nina, should have had a little more self-awareness. Following the cues of Mark, Bill, and Cindy, he described his character while speaking in the character's voice. Joxer already had a deep, clear voice, but his character sounded like he was doing an impression of someone with a deep voice. It was almost a Sylvester Stallone, but if he had a mouth full of potatoes, and gave him Shatner-like timing. A bold choice is better than no choice. Again, Making the attempt is awesome, but then getting upset when people ask you to repeat what you said because you made some voice choices that made your character almost impossible to understand is something different. Especially after mocking someone for choosing not to do a voice when they just started to learn what D&D was less than a month ago. So the camping tavern scene comes along. Maybe this would smooth things out. He wanted a tavern scene. Cool. Here it is. What did he have planned? To drink until he was unconscious. While the other players were chatting with NPCs and with each other, arm wrestling and dancing, Joxer just kept drinking. Now, he seemed happy about just drinking, and it really seemed like that was his plan all along. I asked for constitution saves at certain points to see how tanked everyone was getting. I even gave Joxer advantage as a, but not really, half-dwarf. Even with advantage, his checks could not keep up with the volumes he was drinking, and I warned him that at this rate he would probably be feeling the effects in the morning. The other players and NPCs tried to get him involved. Well, cool then. At least he's having fun. Like, I didn't want to railroad that hard, but being interrupted during my description twice and then changing my introduction up to accommodate what he wanted only for him to sit there drinking, I take a breath, remember that he seems to be having fun and all the other players are having fun. It's a win. I can roll with the rest of the story. Even if the flow got a little wonky there. I only emphasized that I created the whole camp tavern scene for him, and he did the least interactive thing he could do in the situation. The next day, I have them make constitution saves. Joxer passes, so he has a hangover, but not as bad as if he failed. He asks if there is any way to get rid of it. Me. As a pretty raucous caravan that throws almost nightly parties, you know that there is a woman who sells herbs that will ease the hangover. She is easy enough to find and is already distributing them among people she thinks needs them. She gives you a sly, knowing smile and says, "Would have thought you were a full dwarf, the way you handled your drink last night." Joxer. I'm a Goliath. I really didn't want to make the session more awkward than it was becoming with his constant questioning. At least I didn't get interrupted this time, but apparently the others were getting a bit fed up. Bill, remember? You said you wanted to be a half-dwarf instead? And he said you could roleplay as one, but we weren't going to wait for you to remake the character. Joxer. Well, since I didn't rebuild it, I didn't accept it. Mark, you didn't say that. We all assumed you were roleplaying as a half-dwarf now. Cindy, weren't you rolling those saves with advantage because you're a half-dwarf? Nina, yes, he was. I even asked if that was why he was rolling with advantage. Joxer, well, I'm a Goliath. Deep breaths. Slow, deep breaths. Me, no worries. The herbs help you all the same. As the camp is getting packed up. Joxer, that's it? I don't get to haggle with her for the herbs? Me, no, she's just handing them out for free as the camp is getting packed up. Joxer, I don't get to roleplay with her or anything else at all? Me, there have been plenty of opportunities, but you just drank through them. We have to move on or we won't get anywhere with this adventure. As the camp is getting packed up. Joxer, that's not fair. I thought there would be more time. Me, that is fine. Maybe in a future game that isn't a one-shot, we can really explore the social interactions more, but we've already spent an hour on this, and we need to move on. As the camp is getting packed up. Joxer, but I didn't even get into my backstory. Me, as the camp. Joxer, but party as a whole. Dude, stop it. I really didn't want to kick a new player during a one-shot, but I'd be lying if I didn't say my finger was hovering over the button to do it. Again, I put on my trained in diplomacy hat and try to defuse the situation. Me, I get it. It's not what you were expecting. In a one-shot, things are a bit more streamlined to get you into the action. I'd really like to keep playing with you, and maybe next time we play, we can really do more. It's not always going to be like Critical Role, where nearly every NPC has a unique and deep personality. Because, particularly in a one-shot, we are just trying to explore a specific scenario. Maybe next time. So, as the Joxer, you will never be Matt Mercer. Now, at this point, I had already said I am no Matt Mercer, as a little self-deprecating joke, and even explained how this sort of game would be different than the main campaigns of Critical Role, and restated the expectations multiple times. I took a brief moment to debate kicking him, really hadn't given a direct warning, but he had more than enough chances. But Nina chimed in. Nina, and you are not Travis. Joxer, you noob. And he was kicked. We all know what C word he was about to say. Apparently, Nina started watching Critical Role since me, Mark, and Joxer all talked about it, and she thought it would help her understand things better. After that, the camp was finally getting packed up, and Mark caught the brief sight of something streaking towards the camp. An arrow, followed by dozens more, all hitting Joxer, who hadn't taken the anti-hangover herb yet, and thus couldn't defend properly, and then a second volley, with targets picked at random this time. The party successfully fought off the raiders, tracked them down to retrieve the caravan members that had been kidnapped, and found themselves in the middle of the gold horde of a dead red dragon, fighting cultists who wanted to raise the red dragon from the dead and needed sacrifices to do it. Remember the foreshadowing mentioned before? Them traveling through the glistening dewdrop-speckled golden wheat fields? I would have described the fiery red band of sunlight on the horizon that seemed to encircle them, as the dead red dragon's body would later. Would have been cool if I had gotten that out without being interrupted. Anyway, this is my story. In a lot of ways, the story is more about two new players, each only having experience vicariously through Critical Role, but with two very different outlooks on it. One was more self-aware, accepting that they lacked the experience to truly know what to expect beyond the expectations set by the person in charge. The other treated DMing almost like a competition, having described Matt Mercer as the Michael Jordan of DMs, which at the time I probably agreed with. But after this experience, I realized that the analogy doesn't really work, because while DMing is a skill and one I want to get better at, it's not like I'm competing with other DMs to be better than them. I would have liked to think that if Matt and the rest of the Critical Role crew sat down at my table, they would have had fun. Not like if I played basketball against Jordan, where I would just get steamrolled, and it wouldn't be much fun for anyone. TLDR. That guy, new player, suffering from the Mercer effect, questions and interrupts the DM multiple times while trying to describe the opening scene, is rude to other new players for not using a voice, only to have a weird voice people couldn't understand. DM tried to compromise by creating a new scene in a one-shot specifically to meet the players' "you start in a tavern" expectation, only to have the character just get drunk and do nothing else, and then complains he didn't get a chance to roleplay. Can't say I'm too surprised that Joxer didn't turn out to be the most self-aware player. After all, he'd have to either be critically lacking in self-awareness or willfully trying to interrupt the game as often as he did. The big red flag for me was how Joxer just couldn't understand that there was no need for a dedicated healing class, particularly in this one-shot, where they're getting potions as alternative healing options. It just seemed pretty obtuse to be so inflexible on that point, to the extent of contacting another player privately and trying to pressure them into taking the role of cleric, because it would be the right thing for a noob like them to do. Pretty classy move. The rest of Joxer's behavior is just downhill from there. It's obvious that there's nothing wrong with Critical Role or Matt Mercer. They've done wonders for putting role-playing games in front of tons of new people and introducing them to this crazy and awesome hobby, but any sort of fanatical devotion to a correct or optimal way to tell stories is kind of silly. It'll happen, so long as humans are humans. But luckily, brave souls like OP share their tales of such goofiness. Alright everyone, that's it for tonight. Thank you for joining me here in the attic, and take care of yourselves out there. This is Melvin, in the attic, signing out.